Welcome to the Design Dash podcast, your guide to designing a life you love. Join us as we explore the keys to living the life you want without compromise.
Welcome back to the Design Dash podcast. It's just me and Melissa with you today.
Hello, everyone.
Hey, Melissa. And we are going to dive right into a topic that every design firm owner wrestles with, and that is billing methods. I mean, I'm speaking for all of us. You may have your billing method down and you're running with it. I think there's still a lot of conversation around this. So if you are open-minded, let's talk about this. So it's part of
billing a different way. I'm just like, tell me more.
Yeah, tell me all about how you bill. I'm open. But this is part of Design Business Financials Month inside the Design Dash community. And I'm getting ready, and Melissa's getting ready for next week's live workshop where we are really going to dig into different billing methods. So hourly billing, fixed sum, AKA flat fee, or a hybrid of the two. And then there's some less traditional options that you may want to consider. So today is going to be a very high level overview of these different billing methods. We'll chat through what works for us, what we've done, and then other designers that we know that bill a different way. And then we will really dig into it next week in our workshop. So if you want to know more about that, just go to the designdash.com and there's a link to the community and you can join before this workshop because I'm telling you, there's gold there. And then we are also going to talk about how and when to have money conversations with your clients, how to communicate your value, and why designers should feel empowered to charge what they're worth, not just for your creative genius, but also for the project management and the business savvy that you're bringing to every job. So let's get into it. I'm going to start with a quick question from Melissa. So, okay, Melissa, you're kicking us off. You've worked with Laura U Design Collective, our design firm, for at least 7 years, I think.
Yeah, almost.
Yeah. And coached other designers in our Design Dash Mastermind and now the Design Dash community. So what is the biggest mindset block you see when it comes to billing and pricing services for designers?
I think the biggest block is probably not knowing that you're worth it. I see a lot with designers. I know that's
a problem. Like, what is our problem?
Statement, but I mean, we were even talking about this week. Was that this week in the community about? And I see this so much with designers. I worked 5 hours on this project, but you know what? I think I spent a little bit too much time sourcing for this, so I'm only going to bill them 4. And I see that so much with everybody that's in our community almost. Like, I think every designer has been there at some point in time. Like, I took too much time to do it, or I was troubleshooting a mistake that I had made. So I'm just going to reduce my billing a little bit. And I think that there are, of course, times in which that does make some sense. But I think that the underlying block, the mental block there is that, I'm not worth my time. Or like I'm not for my clients, like they shouldn't have to pay for every single minute that I worked on that. And I don't agree. I mean, if
I'm laughing because I hear this every month when we do our time billing. And Melissa's like, what do you mean we're cutting that time? Like, no.
Send that invoice. Like, I think somebody in our community, I think it was Sandy, maybe we're just talking about it. Like, of course, your clients, they could be sitting on their sofa and sourcing on their own, and it will most likely, definitely take them longer than it's going to take.
100%. Or they're going to order something insane that doesn't work.
Right. And then the management on top of that. And of course, issues are going to happen. I mean, I think that a lot of the design is problem solving and troubleshooting. Why are we reducing our revenue because we're solving a problem? Like, that's what we're here for. And so I think just getting beyond that, I think our last podcast with Lori, I mean, it seems like she's gotten past that a little bit. So if you're in that kind of rut, listen to that podcast. She'll set you straight.
Yeah, it's podcast, the one right before this one. So podcast 50 with Lori Paranjape, and it is insightful. So yeah, if you didn't listen to it first, go back. Okay, so it's like, I don't know. For me, when I first started, I definitely undervalued what I was doing. but I was also a novice. I mean, I'd worked for another firm and then for a couple of years. I have my master's degree, my undergrad degree, but I still felt like I am learning a lot. I shouldn't be charging them all this money. So I underpriced. And back then, so this is 18 years ago, I was doing a fixed sum or a flat fee.
Oh,
And
okay.
I mean, I would design an entire house for $3,500.
Do you think a lot of new and emerging designers go flat fee?
You know, maybe. I
Okay.
don't really know. I think that if I did, and I'll tell you why. And this, I don't know if everyone else that charges on a fixed sum or flat fee does it because of these reasons. It was easier. I felt
Of
like
course.
I don't have to track my time, which I still did. And let me tell you, I lost my ass on those projects. Like if I'm billing even $10,000 for a restaurant design, I spent $30,000 in time. So I think a lot of people do start out with fixed sum because it's easier. It's more straightforward. It's maybe an easier yes, depending on what you're charging
Mm,
for your
I could see
client.
that.
Yeah, because they know what to expect.
Sure.
I think fixed sum can be extremely dangerous. Like I said, I charged 10 grand. I spent $30,000
Yeah.
on a project early on. And I think that happens a lot. And that's where we're undervaluing and underestimating even what we're doing and what service we provide.
What was
Um,
the trigger for you to go then to hourly? Because that's how we bill now. We bill hourly.
we bill hourly, and really it was those hospitality projects.
Mm.
But it was also the residential projects where I was designing a 5,000 square foot home for $3,500, and it would take a year. And I'm beholden to this project for a year because I said, oh, fix some. I need $3,500 right now. I just opened my doors like 6 months ago. I need that revenue. What a mistake.
Mm.
But it's hard when you're first starting to say no. And it's
Yeah.
really
More
hard
than work.
it's hard to know what to charge, right?
Mm.
So if you don't have any like basis for it or a reference point.
Yeah.
So, I mean, for us, like you said, we do hourly. Um, I love hourly. I am a huge fan. It doesn't work for everyone. It works for us because we're a larger team. And so we also offer really comprehensive services on large scale projects that can last 12 to 36 months. And those scopes vary throughout the course of the project. They could shrink, they can grow. And so it's very hard to anticipate
Yeah.
what all may be needed on day one. 3 years down the line, I don't know what we're going to need.
Yeah.
So hourly is what we do, but we also estimate a a ballpark range of where that client can expect to fall based on their current scope.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about those estimations because, we've talked to some designers that are emerging and they'll say, well, I don't have the data. I could go fixed fee if I knew exactly how long it would take me to do a project like this, exactly how many hours and what that would cost. When you're just starting out, how do you even figure out what your fees should be?
Yeah, I think it's really tough, honestly, and you may just have to kiss some frogs and make some mistakes and gather your data over time. That's what we did. Like I said, I didn't know starting out, and I just made my mistakes. But I would say, so now the way that we kind of boil it down, and it's very like every firm is totally different. If you are a solopreneur, this will be very different for you.
Mm-hmm.
But we typically will work on a project with a team of a minimum of 3 people on every project because we're really focused on large scale, very complex projects. And that takes more than one person for the most part. And so we can put a per square foot number to that pretty generally.
Yeah.
But again, we are hourly. So that per square foot could be right. It could be a little off. It could be way off, just depending on how the scope changes. But at least gives us a place to start. And so that hourly for furnishings design only, I would say, that per square foot, we start with about $20 per square foot for furnishings only. And if we're doing a new construction project or big renovation project, that's $20 per square foot as well. If we're doing the whole project and it's new construction, renovation plus furniture, I don't know that it would be a clean 40 a square foot. It's probably going to be a little less.
The projects are so different. I mean, we even were going back through our historical data, looking at two seemingly similar projects, and the billing was just very different. The client needs were very different. Where we started with the project was very different, especially like if we're starting after they've already been working with a builder, already working with an architect, or if we're starting from scratch, at ground zero. And I mean, you said earlier, you've been in business for 18 years and I've been with you for 6.5. And I feel like we have a ton of data. And I still don't feel like there's a trend, like there's this common thread where I would feel 100% confident that this is going to be perfect billing if we did a fixed fee.
And I think that's the nature of doing high-end residential interior design, because we're so client-centric. Every single client is different. Right. Their needs are different. Every project is different. Every builder is different. And so that's why I think fixed fee can be extremely dangerous, because you don't know what you're getting into at the outset when you're setting that fee.
Yeah.
But if you know your clients, you have a very repeatable process. I think process is actually a really good point, because if you have a very repeatable process that you follow, you have the confidence to hold your client to that process when they want to push you out of it. Mm-hmm. But I think if you have that structure, you could be really good with the flat fee. You know exactly what you're doing. You do the same thing every time. You deliver a really good result. Yeah. You can flat fee that.
Yeah. And we know people who are really successful doing flat.
And it's probably because of that. They have very strong documented processes. Mm-hmm. When you're just starting out, if you already have these processes, I want to talk to you. Good for you. But when you're just starting out, typically you're not going to have that. And that's okay. I don't know why you would. And so you're going to figure it out over time. To me, I don't know. You can throw a fixed sum at that, but I would do hourly. There is the argument against hourly.
Oh, sure.
And it's that you are going to inevitably undercharge your hourly rate. And let's say you're an experienced designer, you've been doing this for 15 years. You can do something in 1 hour for $300 an hour that would take someone else 5 hours. And so you did it in an hour because you have all the knowledge, you have all the technical skills, you have the stable of vendors. So you only charge someone $300 for all of that innate knowledge. Yeah. Right, that's a strong argument for not doing hourly.
Absolutely.
What's your answer to that?
Well, there's additional things too, from the client perspective. I think sometimes when they say hourly, okay, well then what's motivating you to do this as efficiently as possible? True. If you're going to get more money by spending more time on it, I think that there's always that skepticism from a client in the beginning.
I think, so when we get into our billing methods workshop, I mean, we can talk about this all damn day, but we're going to talk about some of those objections that come up from clients. Just like that, like, oh, you're hourly. So what is it keeping you from spreading this out over 100 hours when it should take you 20? So we have answers to that. I mean, the answer is because I'm not trying to rip you off. And I really genuinely love home. And I want you to have this really beautiful interior. And I want your family living there. That's why. Also because I'm an ethical business person. That's probably a red flag from a client if they're asking you that question. But at any rate, there's a couple different ways to bill. If you don't like straight hourly and you're not totally confident in fixed sum throughout the entire process, there's also hybrid.
Yeah.
Right. So it blends those two. So you may want to do a fixed sum for those really process oriented phases, like the design phases. So anything that is design that really, really well, you can control the timeline, you can control the process. So probably from project kickoff until you're ready to start ordering is what I would think would go into that fixed fee. And then beyond that, you have the ordering process, which is dealing with vendors, troubleshooting. And then you've got potentially construction administration where you're on site.
Yeah.
Those are variable. To me, those have to be hourly.
Yeah. And I think we've talked to some people also who they do fixed fee, but when it comes to something like big negotiations or CA, they're like, oh, well, I actually do that hourly.
Yeah. And so that's hybrid.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's a really great way to do it. God, construction that, because you could be in that phase for 2 years.
Yeah.
And if you gave a fixed sum, then you're in trouble because if let's say there's a pause in the project, and you can address this all with contractual language, I'm sure. But what a pain in the ass. So,
yeah. You really put yourself in the corner.
No, and have to take your client back to your contract every time there's a scope change. That's why we do hourly. I always want to say yes. They ask me for something. Yes, of course. I don't need to go back to the contract and say, that's not in your scope. That sucks to have that conversation.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think we're kind of all over the place, but then so hybrid is a great kind of mix of the two. And it can protect you from those unknowns when you get into those phases of the project where you're on site, there's construction delays or client changes. I think those phases do.
Even if you are doing fixed, like for something like CA, you would always do something like that hourly, simply because it's so hard to predict.
Okay. Always. Man, am I lying? I may be lying because you could, when you get into construction administration and construction is ongoing and you're on site, you could also do a monthly fixed fee. And we do that quite often for construction administration. We're still tracking our hours diligently and keeping within those hours as much as we can. But we may tell a client, like, hey, for us to be on site once a week, meet with the builder for an hour or 2 hours a week, it's X amount a month.
Yeah.
Until your project.
I will say that for that to work, we have a really great relationship with the builder. And they're highly communicative and they can anticipate changes or issues before they happen.
Yes, that's true. We are only comfortable doing, like, let's say it's $5,000 a month for us to be on site once a week until your project is complete. That is with a builder that we know and trust. Yes, that's not going to spend 5 hours a week instead.
Right.
So I think that's a good alternative as well. But we are still tracking the hourly just to protect ourselves. We've got to make sure we're not.
Right.
What about some of these alternative billing methods that came up during our Design Dash community co-working session? So we get together, if you don't know what co-working is, we get together once a month and spend an hour chatting about the topic for that month. And so this month it was billing, obviously. And so some of the group brought up alternatives. So like hourly packages. So maybe you package your time at like, here's a 10-hour block of time. I'm working with you on a consulting basis. It's 10 hours. And then once we use that 10 hours, we'll decide, do we want to do another 10-hour block? What do you think of those kind of packages?
Yeah. I mean, I think that gives you a lot of flexibility, and to take on certain types of clients. And I think it works really well if you are, again, working in something with a scope that it's not limited, but it's really somewhat rigid. Like, where there's a beginning and there's an end, they're not going to add much, you're really stuck in just a couple of phases. I think that makes a lot of sense. And as long as you know what you need to charge in order to make the revenue and the profit that you want out of that project.
Like if I was doing 10 hours, a 10-hour block, I mean, really, again, it's hourly. Like it's $300 an hour, whatever it is, whatever you feel like you can charge that's competitive in your region for your service, $300, $200, whatever it is. Then you're like 10 hours for $2,000. They pay up front, in my opinion, before you get started. And so that way they're not inspecting every single thing so closely too, because you're not billing them hour by hour. It's really just a chunk. And so they have that expectation up front.
Yeah, I think it works really well for, after the design process is complete and you're doing just exclusively decoration. I know a lot of other designers who they'll have somebody maybe on staff who only handles accessories and they'll bill it that way.
Yeah. I like that. And then there's also like percentage of project. So this one, I don't think we've ever done it. This is, I think, more common in the architecture world, but you would charge a percentage for a new construction or renovation, you would charge a percentage fee. It would be a percentage of the overall cost of the construction, which fluctuates, right? So if you're working with a builder and you start out with a $3 million bid and you're like, okay, I'm going to be, I don't know what it is, 10 to 15% of construction. And this is just another objection a client may make, what's to keep you from selecting really expensive products to up my construction costs so you make a greater percentage? Right? Like that's an argument, but I think percentages, it's straightforward, but I think it just takes a lot of management. You could also do percentage of furnishings budget. So let's say you have a $250,000 furnishings budget and you're like, I charge 20% for design fee or whatever it is, 10% of design fee. That's a way to do it as well.
Yep. And I think when it comes to furnishings, there's also some people will just charge, okay, I am 35, 40% across the board. I've heard of that. That's the markup just across, just to make it really easy and more palatable. I think like that's the expectation.
Yeah. And that's for design service.
Yes. I've seen somebody, not going to name names, but they will do they only do new construction. So they'll do percentage of the construction for their fee. And then when it gets to furniture, like they don't send anything itemized or with budgets. They're just like, it's 40% on top of everything. And that's okay. They're managing it for selections.
Okay. I mean, that's different than how we do it. We give clients a discount from MSRP. So we say any furniture you're purchasing through us that is a trusted trade vendor or wholesale vendor, fabric, wallpaper, furnishings, whatever, we do 15% off of MSRP. So we do make a margin, but it varies by vendor. And that's a lot of tracking, but there is fee in there. But our design fee is separate because they could buy their furniture on their own. They can take our design and go and purchase it all. I mean, no one ever does, like knock on wood, because we're also control freaks and we want it to be perfect and handle that procurement phase. So we want them to purchase through us. But they don't have to. So I think everybody just does it so differently.
They do. And I often wonder if it's by geography too. Talking to some of our designers in Chicago, like a lot of that in the suburbs, at least from what we know, this could not even be completely true for Chicagoland, but it's percentage of construction costs and then just this flat markup across the board. But then I also know of, some pretty big designers here in Houston who do the same thing. And so I don't know. And then I often wonder, have you always done that? When did you change? Like, I'm so curious.
With that thought in mind, do you think there is a path forward for this industry to ever find consensus on how we all charge?
No, because I think, especially knowing designers, all of you guys just want to be different sometimes too. So you're just like, okay, well, I'm going to differentiate myself and I'm going to do it this way and it's going to be better.
I know, but we all think we're doing it the right way. Like, I think the way we do it is so right. Like, we are hourly, we estimate, and then we charge for furnishings, but we do it as a discount from MSRP. And the way that we do it, I'm like, that's the right way. What? How are you doing this differently? But then, like, we just had the call or podcast with Lori Peranjape, and she does it totally differently. And she is 100% sure that the way she does it is right.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we all think we're right. But I am open-minded. So if somebody else can convince me, bring it. I'm open.
I am always so open to fixed fee just because of how easy it sounds. I think it must be so nice to tell a client, you're going to pay X amount each month until I'm done with your project. That has to be so appealing. But then when I see how we build and how it works, and it's like, oh, well, the grass is always greener, right?
Yeah. And I just think for me, we would devalue ourselves. I feel like we would undercharge. And no, I worry about that. It scares me. That fee scares me just because I did it long ago and it like ate my lunch. It just crushed me. Maybe we should put like pen to paper and say like, okay, what if we priced this project that way? Let's see what they say.
Yep. I mean, I've already started.
Oh God. Okay.
I've already looked at it.
Okay. Well, we'll follow up with that later. So how do you have this billing conversation with your client when you are, I mean, money is a kind of a taboo subject, but it is so important to have these conversations with your client with transparency and with confidence too.
Yeah.
So when do you think we should have these as design business owners, having these conversations?
Oh, I think as early as possible. I think it should happen in that first conversation.
I mean, I agree with you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Day one on the phone. Hey, this is how our fee structure works. You will enjoy 15% off of retail for furnishings, which is really,
Mm-hmm.
this is our typical furniture budget. If I don't know, like if their project is a little unclear, maybe they don't quite know the full scope yet either.
Yeah.
It's hard to put an estimate to it. But I will send a proposal, and based on what they're telling me, I can give them a very general estimate. But I note there that, hey, this may change as we go through the discovery process. So we also map this to phases. So we'll have our kickoff, and then during discovery, we really dig in with our client as to what their scope is, and we end up with a program document, which is a detailed written document of what their scope is. And it changes over time, but that really gives us a good place to start. So if a client is unclear of their scope, that's okay. We'll get there. But we will get there when we're already working together.
Yeah.
Like I don't go to the house and help them establish their scope in their program before they hire us. That is something that is part of our design.
Yeah.
But talking about it early, and then I think talking about it pretty often throughout the process makes sense too.
Yeah, I mean, especially right now. I mean, we just went through a couple of weeks of, well, will there be tariffs? Will there not be tariffs?
Oh my
And okay,
gosh,
well,
I
there
know my
will
head
be,
is
but they're not going to be what we thought that they were. And of course, we're ordering for projects right now. And so how do you communicate that to a client then of, okay, you really love this item. We really want to get this for you, but now it's 15% more. And I mean, obviously we have to have that conversation. It's so important to be transparent. It's not a fun conversation. I think it's slightly better because it's not something, it's so outside of our control. And I think that everybody else is experiencing it in so many other aspects of their lives. But yeah, those conversations are tricky, and they happen often throughout a project.
Yeah. And I think it's important to note that we do have those conversations because as a business, we can't absorb those fees.
Mm-hmm.
That just is not smart business. And as much as you want to help your client, and as scary as it is to go back to them with an increase, that's not your fault. Or even if it is your fault and you forgot to charge for something or you missed something, we still go back to them because at the end of the day, this is their house.
Yeah.
I'm not living in that house. That's not my chandelier. I'm not going to absorb 15%. I can't, as a business owner, do that. So I think the reason why I may be tempted to absorb that cost is because I question my value as a creative. And I think
would
that is
never absorb that cost ever.
I know you wouldn't.
With how high some of them are, I was like, okay, I'm so sorry about that, but these
Yeah.
materials.
Well, and then they have the decision. Do they want that or do they not? Like we give them
Right.
the choice, but we do take it to them and we do not absorb that anywhere. We don't hide it somewhere else. We are transparent. We're like, hey, this is cost.
I will say that with a lot of the vendors that are coming through, it's just you won't see the separated tariff. It will just be an increase in the price of that item. And
that's interesting.
Yeah. That's how,
Yeah.
I mean, we've only seen it happen a couple of times. I think what's really interesting is that it's going down to materials, right? Like these materials are what's going to be taxed. So it's not an immediate change. They're going to see this increase over the next 2-3 years. And so I think that just reiterates how important it is to have these conversations, from the beginning and then throughout. is because these prices are going to be high and then they're going to fluctuate and they're going to change. And it's not just, I mean, it could be 4 years in the future, whenever they need to buy new materials for those items.
And I think now's the time to have that conversation with your client, because I feel like we learned our lesson during COVID on being transparent around delays.
Yeah.
Remember how delayed everything was, and it was horrible. And we tried to kind of shield our clients from that and do everything we could behind the scenes without being transparent. And that came back to bite us when we didn't quite deliver on the project because we didn't tell them, like, hey, this piece may not make it for a year.
Well, and that makes up a good point, is because this is a luxury service. And so how much do you really want to communicate about a problem or an issue? You want to handle it, right? Like you want it to be very effortless and seamless and enjoyable. But man, I think when these big global issues happen, I think, we've learned to over communicate.
And I think we don't assume that the client will know this.
Right.
Like during COVID, you would assume, unless the client is really not watching the news at all, that they understand that there are global supply chain issues and that they are greatly impacting the home furnishings industry. Don't make that assumption. There are plenty of clients that didn't know that. And we didn't communicate it as well as we could have. So now on the tariff situation, which is, again, global, we are communicating it. We're not making any assumptions. Every client is getting a letter from us. And then we're also communicating it on an item by item basis. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I feel like just with billing methods, you learn your lesson.
Right.
With communication around fees and billing with your clients. I want to close it out just by talking about why designers are valuable and why we should charge what we're worth, because we are not only project managers and problem solvers, we are creative visionaries. We are, everyone, creative visionaries. So we are combining this art and science. So I think we've established that many of us do devalue what we do. Not intentionally, but we just do. So how do you convey your value to your clients? Like, what's a good place to start?
I mean, I think it all goes back to, coming full circle. It's confidence. Like, you have to know that you're worth it first before you can communicate that to the client. But then I think it's also important, like, why is your client coming to you in the first place? Why aren't they doing it by themselves? There's got to be a reason. So I would say playing it to that. A lot of times it's the time. It's very time consuming to put these things together. I think that's why it's also kind of hard too, is because people are like, well, I shop on Amazon, or, I go to Target. I've purchased my own furniture before. I can do this. This is on such a massive scale that you need training, experience with us. I mean, you need a team, because luxury interiors is not going to the grocery store and shopping for yourself. It is very, very different.
It's not going to Restoration Hardware and buying a sofa. Yeah. Like, it takes relationship building with hundreds of vendors over time.
Yeah. And I think there's a way to communicate that without being pedantic too, also, right?
Right.
You're right. Like, relying on your relationships, the kinds of relationships that you've built over the years, and just the keen eye that you've trained over time to be able to find things that, not everybody else will be able to find. You can see things in a way that not everybody else is seeing them.
And that's funny, because we do it so often on like a daily basis. We're seeing these things and we're envisioning in our mind's eye, how are we going to incorporate that? And it's just very natural. That is a skill. And so that is really valuable. So yeah, I think that we all as designers need to remind ourselves sometimes. You don't have to do it every hour, every day, but sometimes just take a step back and think like, wow, this is really valuable. Like, not everyone can do that.
That's right.
Hard to remember when you're doing it day in, day out though, right?
Oh yeah, but I see things that the design team is doing all the time that just absolutely blow me away. And then I'll talk to them about it, and I was like, oh, wait, this? It's just so basic for you. Like watching Shannon select fabrics. I remember when we, with one of our new junior designers, she was like, that was the most amazing thing I've ever seen. She picked out 4 perfectly complementary fabrics in like 30 minutes. I don't know how she did it. And I think that sometimes it's hard because clients aren't in it every day, so they don't get to see the magic and the wow. But when you are in that presentation, or when you're, in those first meetings with them, or you're going through discovery, I am absolutely certain they are blown away by the stuff that you as a designer just take for granted.
I think you're right. I mean, just think about different professions you work with that you have no background in, and you're like, whoa, they really just not like, I don't know, working with your financial advisor or an attorney. And you're just like, thank God for you. I didn't know any of that.
Expert knowledge is sexy, and it is thrilling. It is attractive. So if you can be an expert in something, do so, and then charge what you're worth for.
Hey man, space plans and CAD are hot. So I think just if you don't feel like, I know it's easy to say, like, you've got to value yourself. If you're not feeling it, what I do, and this may sound really simple, but I like to do a one sheet that reminds me and gives me just some like blurbs and easy messaging about what we really do for every client. So it may be like, and you can also even write out quickly, like your design fee structure. This should all be on a one sheet so you can reference it when you're talking to new clients. And the more like it's at a glance, it's going to give you comfort and confidence just knowing you have that tool next to you.
Oh, yeah. As many times as I've taken potential new client calls, I look at that little cheat sheet. It just, I don't know, just having that reference point there, it grounds me in a way. And I don't feel like I'm just like grasping at straws. It's really helpful.
Yeah. So I would encourage you to create a very visible one sheet, like put it on your desk, that you can have those conversations. And obviously over time, you can have those conversations wrote, like it's just in your mind. But even when it is, it's still nice to have that little sheet. Yeah. So I do encourage you, if you have one takeaway from this podcast, make yourself a little one sheet about why you're a badass and then how you charge for being a badass. Anything else to close us out?
Well, I would say, if you are questioning being a badass, join us, please. Like, especially this month, we're talking about financials. Like, and the other thing too is, we have our preferred methods, but we don't have all the answers. And what we're saying, it may not work. It really works for us. But I think what's really great about the community that we're in is we get to hear how it works for other people that are, on the other side of the country. They're in completely different markets. They're doing completely different types of design. And it's always good to hear from different perspectives.
All right. Well, hopefully I will see you at our live billing methods workshop next week.
Billing. That's right.
Yeah. Being creative and a project manager and billing people is super hot. Okay. Thanks for joining us. And don't forget to follow along so you never miss an episode.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you for listening. Make sure to check out our next podcast coming live next week on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. In the meantime, you can find us and more wonderful stories like these on designdash.com. And make sure to follow us at Design Dasher on Instagram and TikTok. Till next time.